Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Shyam now, so I request Priyanka and Puneet to come and
Mr. Bobbie and Mr. Shyam to Raheman and
So Bobbie, thank you very much, and Shyam, thank you very much. So we'll start up with your life previous to Magnasoft. Like how was your life and what have you done for life before Magnasoft happened to you?
So prior to Microsoft, I was running a small firm called SailMarks CAD Services. We were doing a lot of work for local customers here, like Tata Consulting Engineers, Bosch. So basically a CAD services company. So my background, basically I'm a mechanical engineer, very much from Bangalore. And the funny part is I never worked in an organization. So, I had this notion of once you get into the pay packet scenario, like my dad said, you never have the ability to take the risk of starting something on your own. So I finished my engineering in '94. September, and for December I started SailMarks CAD, and in the morning I was going all around Kenya and all the industrial areas doing market research, finding out they really needed a service of actually designing, drafting and plotting services. And while I was doing my course in CAD Center, so I was doing my CAD course while I was doing some market research, and in December of '94 I started. So there was a CAD company which was doing a lot of work locally. And in '96, we had an opportunity to work with a company out of Chicago called CFI. They had a huge project, of course, we went ups and downs, so delivering on those projects. And in '99, 2000, through CFI, we learned mapping and GIS. They had requirements from the US. It was a typical outsourced model. Those days, we used to work on 14.4 kbps modems, sending data across to the US and stuff. Then 1999-2000, we came up with this innovative methodology for property tax collection in Bangalore. That's when BATF was formed. Mr. Nandan was a part of it. Then the Aadhaar trust that was funding projects that would help Bangalore City. So we were actually the taxation system that we use today. We've done a lot of work with the local government here. So that gave us an insight into venture capital money, things like that. So and that's how Magnasoft was formed. So that was my story before Magnasoft.
So how was it, this initial phase at Magnasoft? So what are the challenges you faced? I'm sure you would have started by being yourself as an employee, and then you slowly started being employees over there.
Yeah.
So were there any challenges, or it was very easy for you to just go ahead?
There were a lot of challenges. Even prior to Microsoft, there were a lot of challenges to get across our first. Get the first contract and then deliver to the first contract was a huge challenge. It took us about 8-9 months to deliver on the first project. We almost ran out of business. We had no money to pay the employees because the work kept getting rejected from the client, and there were huge communication gaps. We didn't have money to travel to meet the customer in the US. Didn't get the US visa, got rejected because you didn't have the kind of capital to show. So it was a typical startup situation. So we went through all those ups and downs, and the thing was that we stuck on to be very determined and stuck on to delivering to the customer's requirement. It was the first big customer we had to make sure. So we actually moved out from where we were into a smaller conference room, which took on hire, and sat there with all our computers around the table, and we finally delivered to the end customer was AT&T, and finally the files were approved, and then there was no looking back. There was a lot of work that came our way. Went back to the bank with this order and raised more debt, and that's how the company did.
Yeah, I will definitely come back to you for some couple of customer success stories.
Sure.
Before that, Shyam, I would like to know from you, how was the life before Magnasoft? I'm sure I've seen your profile and it talks like you are having 25 plus years of experience in technology.
So let me not bore you guys with all the things and companies that I worked there. My journey began about 25 years ago. I am fundamentally an electrical engineer. I like building stuff, and that is something that underlies everything I've done before the last 25 years. Sometimes I've gotten confused and got into the wrong alleys, and I've sort of come back, and that's part of life. I mean, you learn stuff. So, way back when I was in 12th, for example, I used to work with electronics. I used to build projects across our networks and amplifiers and stuff like that, and radios, those days. Anyway, after my first job was with PEM. This was in '88, right? So they used to have this management training scheme. Indian Institute of Science used to run those all-India tests. So I joined them. I joined the industrial robotics and automation group. I was very, very passionate about robotics those days. Control systems. Some of you, I know you guys come from those kinds of backgrounds. Sriraj is one. Yeah, and Ishan, you might understand what I'm talking about. So Laplace transforms and Fourier series, and so that's what I was doing. PID algos, inverse kinematics. We used to work with Indian Institute of Science for. So we had like an offset access robot for which I built the controller. Very cool stuff. Something I was passionate about. And a few lessons that I learned during that experience is that you could do cool stuff, which all of us love, especially in the beginning of your career. But if you don't have a bigger picture on what problem that solves and how you position it so that you take on the world, you go to all the people who have similar problems, right? For which your solution could solve. That requires leadership. That requires marketing skills. Many of you come from that background, right? I don't mean sales, I mean marketing, right? And those are the learnings then. We built a really good product, really, really good product. And from a leadership standpoint, it so happened that we solved the problem for that particular company that we were working at. And those days, public sectors were flush with cash. That's probably true today. So there isn't really any real incentive for them to sort of productize. Most of it was collaborate with people, get technology, which typically is 10 years behind, modern times. Sorry for being very honest. And so, that was the time when I spent a good number of years with Infosys, and then, EML. And then that's when I was looking for a change. I was disillusioned on certain areas, but I had done some really cool stuff along with the rest of the team in building that whole thing. And that's when I joined Infosys. And the reason for joining Infosys was a startup then. It was about 400, 500 people who were doing something very different, from what we had done. It was a very technical company those days, mid-90s, right? And I also wanted to sort of understand how, the whole technology system, IT systems work and what kind of problems that they deal with, right? Including the domain knowledge, And so I spent a few years with Infosys those days, and we did some very interesting projects in the retail industry. Nordstrom and JCPenney and all these guys, right? They have their own credit cards, just like your Visa and Master, right? They issue their own credit cards. So they have your billing and collection and do the whole stuff. It was pretty cool, and it also gave me the opportunity to travel quite a bit. In fact, travel became a lot. I would spend about 10, 11 months or 12 traveling, in the US. This was during the mid-90s. Learned some really good, interesting things, and majority of these systems were undergoing a change. It was all mainframe centric. Believe it or not, even today, this day, a lot of finance backend, it still runs. You probably know the narrative is more technical because, like I said, I like building stuff. So it was very interesting to build something. So we had to, a lot of times it was not about building completely new systems. A lot of times it was about replacing parts of the system. Like a black box thing, right? Like collections, for example. So that was pretty cool. I learned quite a bit about how things work. I also learned about different cultures and people. How people think. I think one thing I admire about the Americans, especially those days, and that is sort of broken bottoms, and you see that everywhere. Definitely India is heavily influenced by sort of that thinking, but those days it was still early stage, right? It's about this whole entrepreneurship. How people, like yourselves, who are many of you are fresh out of college, who are thinking about doing something yourself, like Bobbie did, for example, those days. I think he was way ahead of his time, in that thinking, right? And also thinking big. So if I were to pick a problem for any startup, right, there are two criteria that it needs to satisfy. The problem is worth solving. Somebody is willing to pay you for the solution, number one. Number two is one of generalizability. are you solving that problem for enough number of people? Otherwise, you should be in the services business. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's what Wipro does, that's what Infosys does. But if you want to be in the product business, can you solve a problem in a way that benefits millions of people? You know, and I'm talking consumer, but in the enterprise, maybe it's hundreds, right, or thousands, right? But that's the bottom line, right? So that kind of thinking started, you know, I sort of admire Americans for that. You know, I think they're really good at that. Packaging, branding, you know, all these elements come into play when you're talking about startups. Anyway, so I was passionate about startups. I didn't have the nerve like Bobbie did to go my own way at that point. Right? I still wanted to be an intrapreneur, not an entrepreneur. Right? So I always went in search of projects where I could build something. So after that, I spent several years in Denver, helped build some content management and workflow products way back when. You know, this was used by New York Times and all that. Right? So the product was called SiteMinders. This was during the early 90s. There were no application servers and all that. For those of you who are technical, you know, there was no WebLogic, there was no JPOS, you know, all that stuff. You know, we had to like pretty much. It was pretty cool. You know, we solved some really nice problems there. So built that product. Then moved to the Bay Area. So I was the enterprise architect at a product, you know, at a company called SiteGent. It comes from Synergy and Cogent. You know, sort of combined that. So I was not the founder, but I helped build the product. The product was essentially a, you know, this might be interesting to some of you guys. Anybody understands telecom domain? Here? Okay, there you go. So essentially, it's a bridge between the front office and back office for large telecom carriers. You know, how DSL was being sold those days, right? The people who are copper or fiber in the ground are the guys who serve service, you know, cell services on top of it. So we built this entire bridge. You know, your order management, trouble ticketing, service availability checks, everything that happens in the back end, right? How do you bridge them? So it had a server and a couple of portals, you know, like a B2C portal and a B2B portal. The B2C portal, for example, was deployed by MCA WorldCom. Those days, MCA was a big competitor to AT&T those days. And their B2C portal was essentially ours. You know, it was powered by SiteGent, right? Similarly, SBC was one of our customers. Verizon was one of our customers. Like really large guys, right? And then came 2002. You know, lesson in humility. The whole telecom market tanked. You know, we were planning to go public and all that, and we ended up getting acquired, which wasn't so bad. You know, but we built a great product. Learned a lot in terms of what it would take to make it successful in that kind of fairly complex technology environment, right? So that's sort of when I moved back to Oracle. You know, I moved back to India around 2002. So helped build their first SaaS platform. Oracle has a bunch of on-demand customers, right? So I was very interested in SaaS. You know, if you remember, Salesforce was about $100 million then. So that was their valuation. And they were the poster boys. They were taking on SAP and you know, PON and PeopleSoft and all these guys, right? Earlier, the common wisdom was, you build the CRP stack, and then Accenture or Infosys, somebody else comes in, spends 3 years with you, and implements it. In case of Salesforce, they said, come in, on day one you're up and running. If you want some changes, you can have that, right? So it's a pretty radical concept, and Oracle was obviously trying to get into that. So we built the first platform that took some elements of what Oracle had, but we had to build quite a few big pieces which they were lacking. You know, we put together the entire SaaS platform for them, which was pretty cool. So after that, I worked with a company called Symbol Symbol Technologies. They were acquired by Motorola later on. They were the early guys who invented pretty much RFID, right? I mean, barcodes, for example. I still hold about 90% of the base patents on barcodes, right? So I ran the mobility software division for them, did some cool stuff. I won't get into details. After that, I spent about 7 years at Yahoo. So I was from the Yahoo Global Media at teams in the US and here. Pretty cool technical stuff. Again, I won't go into too much detail. And then I also ran the advertising platforms for Yahoo globally. Yahoo itself makes over $1 billion in revenue. So I ran the teams that did that whole thing. That's been my journey. I've always been passionate about being an entrepreneur. After about 7 years, I was deciding to look for something to do with the entrepreneurial space where I don't have to worry about the sales and marketing parts, which I'm not that passionate about. And for about 4 years, I've been working with Bobbie, and I really admired him. and he is an expert in that area. So it's all about finding those compliments, right? And it's meant to happen, it happens, and that's the only reason why somebody I can trust, somebody I can work with. See, my personal belief is forget about all the jargon and all the VCs tell you, right? If you can't go out with a person who is your co-founder and have a cup of coffee and talk about nothing about the business, just about other stuff, the last movie you saw or whatever else, you won't enjoy the journey because there will always be ups and downs. So you need somebody that you enjoy working with. And that I found in Bobbie. And that was the primary reason why we sort of got together, and here I am. So we are doing some really cool stuff. Reasons why I joined apart from that was our mission is keep children safe. I personally believe that people gravitate to stuff that they care about. And that is something, it's a social cause. And we are, a lot of people, on my team who are part of that, they are really, really happy about that. We have had some early success. We have a long way to go. That's my background. Sorry, long-winded.
Yeah, so we definitely have a lot of questions for you when it comes to technology. So before that, I would like to know from Bobbie any customer success story. I remember one news coverage which I had seen in TV9. So it talks about some security product for the school children.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly with that.
I think that's a very good example of how we got our first client for North Star. So when Shyam and I met in 2009-10, so the whole notion was, can we build a products business out of India? The services, the only big story out of India already, but now actually discussing as to what should we be doing, right? So actually it took us about a year doing market research across India to figure out what would make sense. And then we hit upon this whole the notion of safety. And then when we look at safety, we look at child safety. And 2009, 2010, it wasn't that big an issue that it is today actually. But we spent about a year's time in going about around India, meeting a lot of the stakeholders, parents, the school owners, transporters, understanding what are the pain points really, because in schools you have teachers to take care of the kids, and at home you have parents. But what happens when the child goes to school and comes back, right? And in school transportation is a big issue. So we went about this whole market research. We found out there was a very deep enough problem and a big enough problem. We looked at the market size. We saw that there are 45,000 private schools in India. That was at about 27 million children today use school buses every day. So it's a huge problem. It's a big problem. It's a universal problem across at least this part of the world, not so much so in the West. And then we said, let's go out there and look at building Magnasoft. So how do you go about doing it? Let's find the first customer. And so we went about talking to a lot of schools. You first call up your friends in the industry and say, hey, we're in the school industry, say, we're trying to do this. And say, oh, GPS, I've heard of GPS. It doesn't work, especially in Bangalore, it doesn't work. We have tree cover, and half the time it doesn't work. So we also found that the market was very fragmented. People had tried local products, and somebody just hacked something together, like a Chinese device and some Google Maps, and put together a track and trace, which was there, but not like a real safety security system which could be completely dependable. So it took us a lot of effort to get our first client, and even when we met Atik of Dean's Academy, who might feel that they're one of our biggest clients today. He said, no, I've tried it, I've lost so much money, I've tried Motorola, I've tried this, I've tried that, look at all these boxes, they're all redundant, they don't work, and sorry, we don't want to keep working. So went back to him and said, no, give us an opportunity, don't pay us anything until you are happy with it. And then we started discussing about what technology. He was a little inclined towards technology, so we started giving him the differentiator, saying why would this be different. He said right from the protocol in the black box all the way to the data analytics part, we own the entire piece of it. And it took us time. We went back and tested those devices. We went and tested those devices under tree cover in Carbon Park to actually see whether they really work or not. So we kind of learned the hard way. And finally, he said, find 2 buses and 2 devices, and then that's how the journey began. We started with 2, and then it worked. And kind of, I thought he also saw our commitment to this business. We were always on call. We were taking him into confidence, saying, hey, we're building this. You will find these issues, but we will fix it. We will have these issues. So okay, I I do not want to open it up to parents as of now, because the service actually is, it also caters to the parents over here. Not actually caters to parents. Parents get to know the whereabouts of the bus, and they know any delay more than 6 minutes they get to know on their mobile app. So it's a very parent-centric application. But he said, I don't want to take chances. I will first test the product myself, and then. So his confidence sort of grew over a period of time. From 2 we got 10, and now it's history. So we got our first deal. After that we got our second contract. With the first reference we got a second. And of course, the first one was at a very aggressive price point, and then we got a second. And today we've got more than still early stage. We've got about 150 schools. We have more than 125,000 kids that use our service across India now. We started with 1, we had 2, then we started Bangalore, then we had focus on the south, and today we are all over India, and also international in Africa, and Middle East. So it's definitely, the toughest thing I would say is to get your first client. But if they see the passion and your commitment that you have, and your ability to go back and communicate with them, I think then you have them.
I'm sure you have a lot of happy customers like this. On a personal level, what is the fun or pain being an entrepreneur? I'm sure you have gone through the journey of finding out the first customer was difficult, convincing them was difficult. But at the personal level, what are the pain and fun being
So I don't see any pain. If you have the passion, it's all fun. You must find a purpose in your life, right? Otherwise, what are you going to be doing in your life? So unless you find that core purpose, like Shyam said, now for us it's like safety, and safety has become our own core purpose. So once you're passionate about that purpose in your life, you've got an objective in your life, I think then it's all fun. And then there's the famous saying, no pain, no gain, right? So you must have a purpose, number one, and of course the whole notion of wealth creation, right? You must be able to understand the whole concept of saying, I'm going to sacrifice, I'm going to go through this entire pain for something in the future. So you have to sacrifice today for your future. So when you look at the bigger picture, it's like going to the gym, right? You unless you work out, it's a fun pain, really. I would say it's not like a pain, and it depends how you look at it, what your perspective towards it is. So I look at it very positively. Today we have a lot of challenges ahead of us, but that's fun. That's because and that's why we are there. Our whole existence is there. If we can't solve these problems, then what's the fun, right? So.
Bobbie, I'll come back to you with a couple of other questions on how do you scale up Magnasoft. Before that, let me ask Shyam a question. Because since you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, so what are the technical challenges? Because you are a technology person. So what are the challenges they face in terms of technology?
I think it's. Let me take a step back and answer that. When we discover a problem, I think the key thing is the problem. Can we solve the problem well? There are marketing successes and there are customer successes. Customer successes are those where we solve the problem well. Marketing successes are those where sales probably allowed somebody to sell huge volume, but it doesn't sustain itself, right? So the key thing is how do you quickly hit the market with a solution that solves a significant amount of the problem, if not the entire problem. And at the same time, not spend too much time doing it. It's always, at the end of the day, is the piece of the problem that you pick to solve. If you solve that, will it ease a significant amount of pain in the customer? And how do you do that well? Because if it is very quiet and chewing gum, you create a prototype and it works 50% of the time, right? People very quickly will judge you based on that, right? And there are times when you need to do that, but at the same time, if you don't experiment, if you have like a waterfall style model, I know some of you at least have a software development background, right? Then it is likely that you will spend 9 months and come out with something that misses the mark completely, because either your demography has changed, either the problem set that you wanted to solve has changed. So how do you balance the two? I think that's the biggest challenge. And I would say that has eased enormously today. The reason is, if you look at solving a problem, at least in the space that we are lucky to be in a space where we touch so many things. People call about IoT, Internet of Things. How many people have heard the term? But you can imagine. That's what we do, and that's what we've been doing. Earlier I come from embedded systems background, people were talking about M2M. Anybody heard of that term? That was nothing but IoT those days. They used machine to machine, right? So that's what we do for a living. And today there are so many abstractions in open source community, in Apache sort of projects. There's so much happening where you can pick the elements and craft a system that works reasonably well. I mean, all you need is a couple of developers to pull something together that works reasonably well. You won't be able to build an entire product, but you'll be able to build something that you'll be able to test with today. So from a challenge perspective, I think, despite having all this, right, the key thing is not to go overboard. Stay grounded and build a solution that solves a problem well enough, and then iteratively test it. I mean, if you look at any of the software, if you look at Eric Wright's, that talks about the lean startup and all that, right? I'm sure many of you will be reading all that. But the fundamentals are very, very simple. The fundamentals are test before you take the next step. Take one step, test, take the next step, test. And when you're doing that, each step is solving a significant part of the problem that the person cares about. Otherwise, they won't even bother testing it. I think that's the challenge. It's easier said than done. So a lot of times I'm struggling with, hey, which elements do I use? How deeply do I test it? How robust it needs to be? For me to do an initial test, a beta, versus a full-fledged product. I think that's always the challenge. And that has never changed. That has always been the case. But I think it's easier today than it was, say, 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. So for example, all the IoT stuff, right? Eventually you want your own operating system, perhaps. But to begin with, you can easily take a custom, stock Android kernel, and you can do whatever you want with it, right? Samsung, for example, they have loads of money to provide everything, but they came up with Tizen only recently. Earlier they were backing on Android, right? I mean, there are artifacts available out there, and there is a community willing to do what it takes to be able to do that. So that's one thing that is a technology challenge. So the bigger part is really people-centric, and I'm bundling that in technology because at the end of the day, you want great engineers to work with you. And it's not about how great a coder you are. It is also about how passionate you are to be able to be an entrepreneur. Because there are some sacrifices that you will make when you come into a startup. You may not get top dollar right away when you come in, right? But you'll get stuck. You have the intellectual arrogance and the passion to be able to create something that will give you 100 times the value that you would get in working for, I don't know, a larger company, right? I think that's that's something which is a challenge. I think things are changing. I think we are getting into that Bay Area culture where it's a chip on the shoulder if you worked at 10 failed startups. People don't look at you as you did something wrong. People look at you as, hey, you have so much experience, right? That mentality is also arriving here, but it is still slow. I think it would still be early days. In Bangalore. Bangalore, if anything, I would say it is closer to Bay Area than any other town in India. But still, that's another challenge. Attracting people with the right mindset. It's not just about the capability. It is also about the attitude with which they come. Am I willing to be agile enough? Am I willing to make the kind of compromises that I need to make? And be agile about creating something really fast, testing it in the market. That whole mindset thing. Those are the two things that I can think of.
Since everything depends on technology nowadays, we have been seeing a lot of people talking about technology. So when it comes to innovation in technology, and then when it comes to changing from one platform to another, what is your thought on that?
Sure. So I think innovation, like you rightly said, innovation is not about doing some deep fundamental research, where you come up with the next generation electronic circuit. Right? I mean, that's useful. Don't get me wrong. Everybody who has survived for decades have had some investments like that, right? For example, this whole AMOLED screens that Samsung has been working on, or the quantum electronics stuff that IBM does. There's like probably 1% of that, right? Really, the innovation is about structured innovation. Is about identifying the right problems and then solving that in a way that nobody else has solved it before, right? And then being able to lock that down. I think the other thing is about how do you lock it down? How do you patent it? How do you quickly hit the market with it? Because patents is one thing. Patents is useful to some extent, but it is all about taking an idea and then taking it to the solution part, where in 3 months' time, somebody is able to actually use it to address the real world problem. Because let's face it, right? I mean, ideas are divergent. It's all about execution, right? I think innovation is the ability to come up with stuff that solves real world problems in a way that hasn't been thought of before, a lot of times. And how quickly can you get that to market? There is innovation in process, there is innovation in the whole development paradigm, right? That you employ. It's not just the idea. But I personally believe in ideas can creating conditions where people are thinking out of the box. People by nature don't take the beaten path. Where you have directed innovation. It's not like, see, there are a couple of approaches one could take. If you have lots of money, like Google used to have this, take 1 day off each week, right? That kind of that is what I call let 1,000 flowers bloom approach. The problem with that is you will come with some great ideas. So that's a good thing. But are they all connected to some trajectory that you want to be on? That is the question. I personally don't believe in that. But when you have lots of money, it's always a good idea to grow those idea farms. But when we are what we are, as an entrepreneur, you want them to be aligned along a vector. There is a particular direction that you're going in. Give people time, give people the freedom to come up with ideas, and then create conditions where the right ideas bubble up to the top. That's really innovation in my mind. I can look back and the 20 people developer team that I have today, every person can think for themselves. Almost every person. And that's a beautiful thing. They come back and counter you. They come back and argue with you in terms of, hey, why do you do it this way? Why not do it this way? Right? Once you create that culture, innovation happens naturally. And once you stack hands, it is also important that we have the discipline to execute. Right? You might have had different ideas earlier. I think that's what it is. I mean, innovation in my mind, I've worked with so many companies, in the US and here. It tends to be slightly abused. People think that you come with something way out there, and half of them die along the way, right? I mean, it's really about doing everything that you're doing innovatively, right? And if you can create the conditions, everybody can be innovative. That's my personal belief. I don't know if I answered your question directly.
Yeah. So I'll come back with a couple of questions on entrepreneurship in your point of view. My question is like, how did you manage the growth? I'm sure like you started up and you see the success and you are what is the adversity thing like that?
Magnasoft, we now close to 1,000 people.
1,000 people.
Yeah, so
I'm sure from 0 to 1,000.
Yeah.
So because being a founder and being a CEO, so you don't have to just look at the sales or marketing, you have to look at the organization as well.
So there are different phases of growth, right? In the startup phase, you have to do everything, right? From all the functions that you think of, you have to do everything, right? And like Shyam said, it's also very important to find the right people who can really complement your skills. For example, I see most trends in customer handling, customer relationship management, sales, marketing. So I think the three main pillars of starting any business is one, of course, customer. Somebody who can attract and retain money, because at the end of the day you have cash to do business. And third, including technology, is somebody who can attract and retain people. So if you have these three things, I think I think it's I think it could be a brilliant start if you can start with that. So in my journey, of course, since I was having more on the customer side and on the finance side, of course, we looked out for many people, but we went for a person who was really very passionate about doing stuff. It's not, of course, it's about knowledge, but it's also about people who are equally passionate and have a hunger to grow, and very professional in their approach. So we went on and looked for those kind of people. One thing I'd like to like a piece of advice is, initially when you start an organization, you tend to reach out to your friends and family. I think that's the wrong thing to do, really. You tend to, because expectations go up from them. You think, oh, my friend, don't worry, he'll take care of marketing. He's really good at speaking, but eventually that's what happens, right? So you need to find professional friends. For example, the way when Shyam and I met, we had so much in common, but that we realized later, after we had this passion of working together to solve a particular problem. So if you have a problem, a deep enough problem to solve, and a big enough problem to solve, and you find people who are like-minded, who have the passion and the hunger, and determination, all the remaining part of it comes later. You become good friends because you come together for a common cause. So I started off with that entire notion. Of course, there were ups and downs. in working with a lot of people. And I've learned a lot from a lot of people because, like I said, I've never worked in an organized fashion. So I had an opportunity of working with Abhishek Mukherjee, who was earlier the MD of Compact. I was sort of mentored under him to kind of organize Magnasoft and sort of do that. Then with Shyam, the rich experience that he has. So I think it's all about reaching out to the right people, and you've got to have that. You've got to connect, and you can make that out in a couple of meetings, 4-5 meetings. You get to know if there's a common fire burning. Then you just get the vibes, and then after that it's only a matter of function. Then you understand, okay, this person is good at technology, somebody good at finance, somebody good at things. Okay, let's go out. For example, we said with our next gen product that's going to come out this year, we are in 2015 now. We said, I think we're going to hit the consumer market now. I think we need somebody who's really passionate, strong in the marketing front. The sales is one, but marketing. So we are actually looking out for somebody. We've met so many people, and we found a couple of people who really share the same passion, who share the same vision, and they are very excited. So they're reaching out back to saying, hey, when do you think we can get started? So they said, hey, wait for the prototype to come. Once the prototype is ready, that's when we need marketing to happen, right? So it's all about going out and reaching the right kind of folks professionally through professional networks, and then seeing whether the connect is there or not. And after that, once you're together, that's the core team. So once you're the core team, then of course the second level of building, all the different functions of all the sales, marketing, HR, admin, finance comes into play. And even there, second level also, you have to look for people who are like-minded, because their personal vision and your vision and the company's vision should actually match. Can you give them the kind of life that they really aspire to have within the organization? Can you give them the kind of respect and the glory that they want, which they would not get elsewhere? So once you have that kind of passion, and again, it's like having a core and growing it, and suddenly you'll see across the organization, you cut across the organization and you connect with like-minded people across different functions and at different levels. And those are the key people who actually help spread the culture of growth and bring in the excitement in the organization. So it's still a long way to go. I think if you look at maybe 3 phases and 3 Magnasoft days, and Magnasoft and now North Star is what I call Magnasoft V2. We're in the Magnasoft V2 stage right now, version 2, which is going to be much more exciting than where we were earlier.
So we have been reading a lot about the mentorship for the entrepreneurs. You have one mentor who guide you throughout your journey, at least in the initial days or something. So do you have the mentor? Do you believe in mentorship?
Absolutely. Shyam is actually my mentor. We must share how we met.
So how to find the right mentor?
Yeah. So when we wanted to do 2007-8 time frame, we said, okay, we can continue to grow the company horizontally. Like any IT company, keep adding more people, adding more customers, adding more service lines, adding more customers. But how do you grow vertically? How do you climb the value chain? How can we get more from less? So products and products idea. So then I said, I come from a pure services background. From day one, we're doing only right from hands-on doing services, but I have no idea about the products business. And the core DNA of a products company is very different from that of a services company. So let's go out and look for somebody who really has run products companies. So we actually reached out to ABC, a headhunting firm, executive firm. So I knew Shyam, I reached out to him and said, we're looking for somebody who can really help us. Maybe not full-time right now, maybe can help mentor us, guide us, and tell us what not to do, because that's very important, right? So through that connect, I met Shyam, and we just hit it off, and then Shyam was then with Yahoo, and he would just spend so much time on the weekends. I remember every weekend we used to be at coffee at HSR layout, and Nadiga spent so much time, and I just really look forward to the Saturdays, go out there and sit and get so much of information and knowledge from him, right? So mentors, again, I think, as an entrepreneur, you have to be a little careful. As my personal experience, you will find 2 kind of people out there. One are the advisors, and they have been there, done that. They've climbed the ladder of their career. They've done very well for themselves. They've sort of retired now. They need that income, okay, but they will spend quality time with you. But then they'll go by the hour. They'll say, okay, a couple of hours a month, or I'll discuss things with you in just 2 hours. You can ask them as many questions, and they will give you the answers, and that's it. Which is good. You need advisory level kind of people, and then you have young people like Shyam, who get that mind share of actually getting into your business and understanding, hey, what are your real challenges? And they will call you up in the middle of the night saying, hey, I got a brilliant idea, why don't you try this. So it's not about the hours you spend, it's about the mind share across the week, day and night, when somebody's also thinking about what could be the other, and they're only opening up different possibilities, and they're just a whiteboard you can bounce ideas off, so they just, but somebody who has an equal mind share of your business, who understands your business deeply, who doesn't look at the hours really and say, okay, so that I think in my mind is a true mentor, because he understands your pain like you do. He's getting to your wavelength. While he's right there, up there, with the kind of experience that they have, he's trying to, with all the experience he or she has, they're trying to get into your shoes and trying to figure out how could they help you solve those problems, right? So those are, in my mind, are true mentors. And I think you have to again look out through professional forums. That's the best way to look out for professional forums, reach out, and again, they have to see your commitment. They have to see your passionate. If you think it's going to be remote controlled by you get a mentor and then the mentor will do for you and things will happen, no. You've got to see how much skin do you have in the game. It's only then when they get very excited about helping you out. Otherwise, it's just the advisory for 2 hours a month, I guess. So.
Bobbie, I'll come back to you on the suggestions on funding. Can I know, since you have worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, what are the basic mistakes an entrepreneur makes, at the initial stage, throughout their journey? Like, do you come across, notice any mistakes which could have been avoided at the initial stage?
I think that's a very interesting question. Yahoo themselves, my manager used to be Sharat Sharma used to be the chair at NASCOM. He is a venture capitalist and very, very mature guy. He is one of the best managers that I've had in my career. And he was a big mentor. And we had about $100 million in play in many of the Indian companies. One of them was Consyn, for example. And there were a few people like me who are sort of tinkerers, builders, who are very passionate about looking at what other producers are doing. That's sort of, I'm coming to your question. So that's how I had, my fingers in so many pies. Because like Bobbie said, the last thing that he said really hits the mark. He's an entrepreneur passionate enough, right? It's not about the mistakes. It's about, is he passionate enough or she is passionate enough to recover from those and then quickly move on, right? Because every entrepreneur, believe me, makes mistakes. And mistakes are not known beforehand. See, you have a set of choices. Everybody understands Herbert Simon, right? A lot of you have MBAs, right? So that bounded rationality concept.
Yes.
Everybody suffers from that, right? So forget all the mathematical models and theories that you might learn still in the MBA. Everybody makes mistakes. The question is how quickly can you recover from that? We are making mistakes of our lives, which is why we agreed and stacked hands on this model where we said we will test, we limit our exposure when we do the tests, and as we continue, some of the ideas that are good ideas will gain momentum because you get a positive response when you test it from the customers and so on. In other cases, when we test it out, so-called mistakes, those ideas die. It's a Darwinism of ideas, right? Every entrepreneur goes through that. I think if you are not failing as an entrepreneur, I think you are not trying hard enough. I don't think there is any such thing as safe entrepreneurship. I don't know if that was the answer you were looking for, but we make mistakes even today. We have hundreds of things that we are looking at. I'm sure half of them won't succeed. But the whole notion is how quickly can you set up a model where you can test them and let the ones that are bad die out as quickly as possible. There is no way to know whether something is a mistake beforehand. You only, hindsight, like they say, is always 20/20, right? Unless we test it, unless we try, we won't. Bottom line is, if the person is passionate enough, he will persevere, she will persevere through the series of mistakes that they make and learn from it. That's all I can say. I've looked at so many other companies too. I can't say I've looked at a statistically significant sample of entrepreneurs. I haven't, right? But the ones that I have seen that I deeply admire, like Bobbie's one guy, Ganesh, who was the head of Bharat Matrimony, right? I I remember sitting with him and having these conversations about conversions. They had some funnel conversion issues, right? And it was very interesting. And everything that I've learned is they're humble, without a doubt. Every entrepreneur, because you have failures as an entrepreneur, that makes you humble. You will never think you are an Einstein, and you are willing to listen to other people. So that's one great trait that I find in all great entrepreneurs. Having failures is a good thing. You know, as long as you have a model on how to deal with them and how to recover from them.
That's a nice answer, actually. So I'm not sure if you would like to answer this question. Do you regularly watch on companies who are born of nothing because of the technology? Okay, are there any companies you really follow on?
Actually, quite a few companies, right? I think some of the companies that I deeply admire. One is Facebook. Yahoo as well. You know, I worked at Yahoo. You know, some of the greatest contributions to the open source community have come from Yahoo, right? Similarly, Google is one such company. I think. You know, and these are known names. That's the reason why I'm picking them. There are many small companies which you have never heard of that I admire very deeply. Because when they build something, you know, the philosophy is all common, right? If you look at Hadoop, how many people are familiar with Hadoop? You know, okay, Hadoop DFS and MapReduce and all that stuff, right? So that's a good example, more recent example, right? Linux, you know, if you look at CloudWatch, right? You know, the way, you know, the substrate or the underlying concept is when they start solving problems, those small teams, like the 5 people original team, or whatever that technical team that started solving the problem, they solved it for global scale. They never thought that, hey, initially I have to support 100,000 people, so let me build this platform for 100,000. They said, no, I will build this product for however many millions, doesn't matter, the entire population of Earth. If they were to use it, this thing should scale. It doesn't mean that you implement all of it. It's about thinking globally and then building something that you can iterate over as you go through it, right? Don't get me wrong. If you start solving world hunger, you will never get your product off the ground. But you should have a vision of solving world hunger if that's your mission. While you are building the first cut, when you are building the solution for Corona Club, right? That's the key thing. Those are the guys that I admire. And I can give you many examples in terms of technology on what is it that I admire. There is something called, something called Shim proxy, you know, which is open source. You know, all it is very simple, right? It's a persistent TCP connection that is held between the browser or any service and another backend. It's a persistent, so there is no setup and tear down in terms of how you know. I don't want to go into too much technology, but the bottom line is the kind of scale that you will have, you will be able to support millions of clients on one network interface. Just one network interface can support 1 million clients, and this was built about 12, 13 years ago. You know, some of the technologies that you're all familiar with today and love didn't exist then, right? That's one good thing. All the Facebook APIs, for example, all the Facebook APIs that was done, MapReduce and HBase or the big table that Google built, right? Every one of those, right? I mean, obviously there are so many other things that are happening, you know, that I'm sure many of you follow. So I do keep following, looking for ideas and what is happening with two vested interests. One is I would rather use what somebody has built than resolve the problem. The stupidest thing for you to do is reinvent the thing. You know, if you have something that solves the problem that you want, use it. You know, and solve problems that are important to you, that are core to you, that nobody else has solved, and give it back to the community. What's a big deal, right? I think that's the key thing. You know, I'm a total believer in the open source community, and there is enlightened self-interest in Google and Facebook and all the big guys in giving it to the open source community. And some of the elements that Bobbie was talking about, if you are passionate, it is good pay. Why do you think after spending 10 hours or 12 hours in a Yahoo or a Google or a Facebook, somebody goes in and contributes to open source? There are developers who contribute to open source because they are passionate about that, right? So that is an element that comes out of that. So
I'll come back to with your viewpoint on emerging trends and technologies, startups and technology. So before that, Bobbie, can you suggest something on funding part of it? How do you go about raising funds for your company?
So funding, yeah, of course, money, capital is very important, but it's always an entrepreneur of raising funds or on the customer. I would say, focus more on getting your first set of customers in place. Focus on, because unless you prove your business model, you may have an idea. You start with an idea, you go out there, to do market research. And I say market research, you have to spend a lot of time yourself talking to potential customers, understanding how deep the problem is. Is this problem deep enough to solve? Is it big enough to solve? Is it scalable? All these are actually problem or aspects which even the investor will look at. So anyway, you want to do it for yourself, right? You want to build a company, or you want to build a product company, or a services company, or an organization, or a business, which will give you that satisfaction. So when you start doing it for yourself first and not for the investors, you will solve a problem of fundraising eventually as well. So I would suggest focus on the customer first. Get your first bunch of customers, learn from them. Have them fund your idea or your business in a very small way. Don't worry about scaling up initially, like Shyam said. Work on a problem that can be solved locally, but also a deep enough issue that can be solved, and a big enough problem. Once you get your first bunch of customers in place, and then you've proven the business model, you've seen money coming into your bank, you've seen collections happening, you've seen invoicing happening, collections happening, start to give you the confidence. And then I would say go out there, look out for money only to scale up your business. Typically what happens is, you're out of an MBA, you want to start writing business plans and write volumes of how your business will happen. I think all that's a waste of time. You really need to go out there and prove your business model rather than writing your business plans. Write your business plans after you're there in the market, right? And then prove that your business is going to be successful, and believe in it. Once you do that, you're going to attract money. You will have a bunch of investors lined up. Also, when it comes to money or investment, I would suggest it's better to have pure play investors rather than people who get involved in your business, because somebody who's put their money and running your operations for you can get very cranky, and then you lose the focus of what you really want to be doing. You get influenced very heavily by them. So today we have professional, the whole venture capital group, startup, there's so many forums and there's so much money available in the market today, which wasn't there I think 20 years ago. We had to still depend upon debt, and go on to banks and collaterals and all that stuff to raise money. But today you have people who will just put money on you and looking at your capability of doing things. So spend that time in proving that you're capable, and then start building out the team, which is very important, which also the VC will look at, and then start scaling up your business. And to add to that, you must have a clear exit strategy also in place. So these are the key things. One is problem, deep enough issue, big enough, scalable, have the right team to execute, and an exit strategy. These 5 things, if you've got right, and experiment with those 5 things first, rather than just writing volumes of it on a piece of paper. Experiment with it. Take your time. Take those 6, 9 months, 1 year, and doing it yourself. Once you've got it, then you've got to speed up. Then you've got to rush into it. Believe me, you will have a battery of investors lined up at your doorstep saying, hey, okay, and then you have the choice to select from. I think that's what I will do.
So one big thing Rafikul has to manage is the conflict between among the other people in the organization. Be the investor, be the employees, be the mentor. So what do you want to tell on the conflict management?
Conflict is good actually. We must have different opinions, right? So there's a difference between an opinion and a judgment, right? So I would say be open-minded, don't be very judgmental about everything. Typically, what happens with entrepreneurs is that the sense of ownership really comes into play. And when you start behaving like an owner, that's the worst thing that can happen to you. So you must see yourself as the first employee of your own organization and think like an employee. You must have the financial discipline of saying, I will draw only that 10,000 or 50,000 rupees from that business every month, even though I'm doing so much of business, every month. So unless you see yourself as an employee of your own company, you're not going to see the right fit, and issues of conflicts will definitely come into play. So I think being flexible, being very open-minded, and I think also very importantly is to work with people who you really value. If you value somebody in your organization, as a partner or as an employee or as a peer, you automatically will be open to a lot more ideas and not be rigid about on certain decisions. So once you start valuing and respecting, the people who you work with, all these issues of conflict management will automatically get solved.
We have one or two questions and then we will go to the question from audience. Before that, if you can tell us something on emerging trends in economic startups, technology specifically,
sure.
That would really help us.
Sure. I think one emerging trend that I'm very fascinated with is the whole SaaS approach. Like systems as a service or platform as a service. I know these are all cliche terms, but the problem is somebody was talking about taxi for sure, as a gentleman here, and look at Ola cabs and a bunch of other things, right? Apart from the wrong reasons why they have been in the news recently, if you look at the concept, I think they have built socially relevant problems that are important to a huge number of people. And then they have solved them, some have solved them well, some have. Our online stores, your neighbor, Flipkart, right? It's a great example, right, of how they are coming of age. So I think that's one thing where, if you look at, so I always think in terms of the problem set that the user sees. For example, I'm a kind of guy who hate the idea of shopping. Going into shop and going to 2-3 shops and then looking for a washing machine and things like that, right? So for me, it is a surgical strike. And how easy is it because of the online stores, like the Amazons and the Flipkarts, for me to do that, right? So that's a wonderful problem to have. And there are many such problems, right? Salesforce, for example, field force automation, a bunch of other things, right? So that is a user-centric view. Who is the user? What are the daily problems that we are trying to solve? And are there millions of such users? And can I solve that, right? So there's a whole set of startups, in fact a majority of them I would say, who are picking that class of the problem, those kinds of problems, types of problems, and then applying the SaaS tech to that. Then there is the functional view. What I so far talked about was the user-centric view, right? And they all appear to be different problems. Hailing a cab is different from buying a washing machine to, I don't know, getting some healthcare by some remote doctors, right? Remote healthcare, right? But that said, if you look at the functional view, which is the technology view, the elements that power such experiences are common. At the end of the day, you have a portal, you have workflows, you have, and there is a lot of innovation happening in that space as well, and it's always interesting to see how do people pick those elements and assemble those Lego blocks, if you will, to solve newer problems. That's where you see a lot of companies hit markets much, much faster. See, earlier there was a time when technology used to be a barrier of entry for people because you have to build this platform for a year and then you hit the market. Today there are people who are hitting the market in a matter of months. A couple of developers. I used to have a product manager who started Exotel. I don't know if you guys have heard of Shuku, right? He was one of the product managers on one of our teams, a brilliant guy. He took probably 3 months to go from stepping out of a regular job to launching his product. And like Bobbie said, once he got his first 10 customers, it was easy enough to find investors on that. They liked that. He didn't have to go looking for them, right? So from coming back to the technology trends, I think it is amazing how quickly people can discover those problems. And if you look at every one of these startups, they are not talking about local problems. They are picking problems which are globally relevant and applying technology. So this is the great level of, there was a time when Bay Area was supposed to be the place where you have to get the funding. People would in fact set up startups in the Bay Area to be able to do that. But I don't think that's any longer true, because where would your money go when you raise the money, right? The last question. It would go into building the first version of the product, right? And today, building the first version of the product doesn't take that kind of money, which is where you see startups, blossoming across the world. And I think that's the beauty of it. From a technology standpoint, I think today we are at a stage where there are elements available to everybody. In fact, posting. Posting was the other thing. Earlier, you had to have buy an appliance rack and then put some appliances and have your own IT team run that. Right? Today, it's for free. I mean, if you use the Google App Engine or if you use EC2, for example, it's very easy to bootstrap something very quickly, and you will have all the components available in page except for the at least layer 3 below. I mean, rest of it is really how well you build your product. But I think that's the emerging trends, right? Solving problems that are global, and being able to use technology that's ubiquitous. I mean, elements that are available to everybody. So sky is the limit. I mean, you can pick any problem the underlying elements that are used from a technology standpoint to solve the problem are more or less the same. I mean, you could always differentiate in terms of, hey, the specific machine learning algorithms that I need to, understand, right, buyer behavior on a site like Flipkart. That may be different, and that secret sauce you can bring in later. But to get a first cut out to do the initial test, you should be up by running in 3 to 6 months. If you have 2 developers working together, you don't need anything.
Some recommendation you have for entrepreneurs, a couple of recommendations which you think, must do's and must don'ts.
Yeah, I'm not wise enough to say that, but one thing I would say, if I were to do this all over again, right, I think this is a time that's beautifully right for people who want to be entrepreneurs. I mean, there are so many problems, and people are, like I said, I don't use the term in a negative sense, intellectually arrogant to take on the world. I mean, a couple of guys, your neighbors, stepping out of Amazon and then saying, hey, we want to do an Amazon equivalent, right? I admire that. Follow your heart. Don't be afraid of jumping. I mean, this is the time when you're fresh out of college, some of you, to make that jump. And believe me, the time to be an entrepreneur. Pick a problem that you're passionate about. But please do self-select to be part of your team. I mean, you find a professional partner who is competent, and I keep quoting Stephen Covey. He says, trust. You should be able to trust your partner. Trust is a combination of 2 things. One is competence, the other is integrity. Both are important, right? I mean, finding that kind of a team, the rest will happen. There's so many problems that are worth solving, and word is all. All the information is available everywhere. If you want to launch something in US today, or some other country today, or globally today, it's so much easier. It's a wonderful time to be an entrepreneur. I would say follow your heart, bite the bullet, and take the jump. I don't know what else to say. And don't be afraid of making mistakes. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. It's about how quickly you can recover from the mistake and keep moving forward.
So we'll just take a couple of questions from the audience. But before that, last 2 topics I would like you to touch upon. One is the strategic partnership, and the other one is the ethical practice in organization.
So strategic partnership also is very important, for a startup.
One other thing I wanted to say is, you don't have to start companies yourselves. You're welcome to join people like this.
Very important. So exactly the point I was trying to make is that strategic partnerships are really important for a startup. Similar to what when you start looking out for like-minded people to join you, it's a similar model. Very simply putting it, it's a similar model when you look at like-minded companies who you can tie up with. And these could be companies that complement your strengths. For example, in your own sales and distribution management, could be in technology management, could be in operations, could be in support. So you've got to look out to build your business smartly rather than doing everything yourself. So you've got to look at seeing what is your core business and what do you want to be focusing on, and what can you sort of delegate to, let's say, another company who could be good in doing that. For example, today we have hosted everything out of AC2 or of Amazon, right? We could have gone and built those phone systems ourselves and hosted all, since it's a security application, we always thought about security being a prime concern, right? So, but we went out there, we tested different companies, but then we finally partnered with Amazon, and we're hosting everything out of Amazon. So look for areas that can complement your core strengths. Also look for partners who are bigger than you, because you are a startup. You want to sort of leverage on their their experience, or they're ahead of the curve, right? So you want to take advantage of that. So look for companies of partners who are bigger than you, but who actually complement your core areas and who are good in those secondary areas which are secondary to you but primary to them. And very important again to network with such companies, go out there. And again, you have to really entice them, you have to really excite them to why would they join you? End of the day, everybody sees as to what is it in for them. So you have to be able to really go out there and show them that there is definitely a great value in them joining you, joining hands, and that will really help you succeed. Definitely partnership is very important. Could be, like I said, could be sales marketing, could be support, could be technology, so that will help you grow. And today it's like building an ecosystem really. You really don't want to be doing everything yourself. So So you build the right ecosystem of partners, and then you can really scale up your business.
So something on ethical practices in the organization.
I think ethical practices is the prime, most important thing. Otherwise, like I said, your core purpose of existence is lost. You know, it's not about the money alone. You know, money will follow, but you must have a core purpose in your life and be very, very honest about it. And be very honest about it to yourself. And once you are very clear in your mind, you will come across a lot of times in your career, in your life, where you have to take very tough decisions. And sometimes we get too short-sighted and say, you know what, let me bite the bullet and do it. And I think those are some of the big mistakes that you regret later in your life. It's very tough to take those decisions, but I would say take them. Look at the long haul. It's not an overnight journey. You can't be successful overnight. You know, you must have the patience. You must have the commitment. It's a serious business. You know, you must have a real brave heart. It's not for the weak-hearted. And you've got to be very, very honest. Because at the end of the day, you want to be happy about what you're doing. You might end up make a lot of money, but what's the point in having a lot of money when you're not happy, right? And happiness will come with the content of doing things right and getting them right. So I think ethical practice, I think to us is the most important thing. And if you look at the mission that we have selected, the kind of path that we have taken of safety and child safety, that itself speaks about what we want to be doing of actually going and touching lives. And once you start building that culture, you'll attract positively, you'll attract good people in the organization, and you'll see the kind of change in the company that you build. So I think that's the most important aspect about you.
Sure. So now we are open to the questions from the audience. If you have any specific question, no, I will take this. So you can adjust like the question to the room, and then probably can answer the question.
So why don't you move the consumer scene as such? You are focusing on basically schools. So why not the market, open market means to provide services to the
See how you what.
We started in the school space because that was an easier way to sort of, they had primary interest in it. But the consumers of our service, frankly, are parents. You know, who is most concerned about their children's welfare? It is the parents. So today, I can't share too much detail on this, but there is a global product that we are working on with some industry-leading partners, you know, for the hardware manufacturing and things like that, where you will see a launch mid this year, where we are launching a global product, which directly goes to consumers worldwide.
Any other question?
So, you talked about exit strategy, having an exit strategy. Can you elaborate something more on that? How to, how to take that exit, how to plan that exit strategy, and from move on after taking that exit strategy, how to move on to a different platform?
So it's all about what you want to be doing, right? And what I mean, if you build a product or service and an organization which is like an institution that's going to continue to grow, all depends upon where you would like to sort of end your passion, I would say, or move your passion to another level. So that's how an entrepreneur sees it. But from an investor standpoint, of course, they put the money, they have to see an exit to that money at the right value. So I think value decides as to whether you've reached that value or not, whether within the value of your passion or value of the money. So that is when you decide. So I mean, that is the philosophy of an exit. But if you look at it from a business standpoint, there could be certain targets and milestones that you want to achieve. And say, okay, once I achieve so many $1 million or $1 billion, that's when I would either go IPO or get bought out by another company or the company that build organization that would just align with another larger organization and say, hey, you know what? Once I reach this stage, I've become so ripe enough to be bought out by XYZ company. So I'm building an organization for the next 5 years to be bought out, and then with that money, I'm going to start my next business. So that, in my mind, is the exit strategy. It has to be aligned with larger organization if it's sort of an M&A or an IPO if you want to sort of go public, and that's again to take the organization to the next level, because at the end of the day you need more and more money to grow, right? So if you want to raise more capital, that's when you need to sort of look at going ahead.
So there will be a dilemma, I guess, after putting in 5 years of your time, time and hard work, you are giving that company to a much larger, comparatively larger firm than what you have been able to create. So,
absolutely. But it's like you reach your destination, right? So let's say our vision is now to reach 5 million children, right? we started off saying 1 million kids. We are almost getting to half of that so quickly. So now we said, okay, can we reach can we touch 5 million lives? That's 10 million parents using our service. So when you are satisfied with that, that gives a sense of satisfaction that, hey, this is what I started off and I've reached there. Now it's time for me to go after something bigger or different. That's when you have to, so one is passion, another is emotion. So one is, you have to, it's a fine line, so you have to, in the day, an entrepreneur has to be passionate, but there has to be an emotional connect definitely, but then if you have a much bigger play at the end of it, you'd like to let go and then move on to the next level, right? Do you have any other question? I think we'll take one question.
I'm Ramesh. I was just chatting with Bobbie because I belong to the industry that he works in. The last 20 years I've been selling CAD/CAM series across various kinds of engineering segments. And the last 1 year I've been pursuing this idea of getting into a training profession so that I can utilize my 20 years of experience in training, coaching, mentoring young professionals and then see what's possible. I've been trying it out by giving some guest lectures and things like that. But then my question is not pertaining to a startup as such, but pertaining to a particular problem which is there in the industry. Today when I go to engineering colleges, I see that there is a huge gap between what students actually learn there and then actually eventually put into practice in the industry. There's a huge gap. So is there anything that you can think of as finishing school? What are your views about a finishing school wherein you can bridge that gap to a large extent and make them more employable in an industry? And do you think that's a viable business as such?
Sure. I think
wherein professionals, there are professionals like you and me and Bobbie and within your organization who have loads of experience who can probably spend a portion of their time probably teaching people and getting them more ready to the industry and then also employing them.
So I can answer that in a more generic way. Of course, talk about CAD/CAM, I see there's a big gap.
Yes.
So we also have the whole engineering piece of our business where we are struggling.
Yes.
We hire tons of freshers out of college and we're training them up. It takes 6-9 months to get them up to speed to start doing any productive work. And then so I completely understand that there is definitely a huge gap, right? So now you've got a great idea now of saying that, hey, there's a great need that you see and the industry sees.
Yes.
How do I validate that?
Yes.
Now, the best people to validate that are your customers and stakeholders themselves.
Yes.
So if you were to spend a lot of time in actually going out there, and what has worked for us is going and meeting people who are the key stakeholders in this business. So who are the key stakeholders? Students, of course.
Yes.
Students. But would they pay for this? Yeah, they would. Business model, yeah. Would it be colleges? Would they, pay? Yeah. Would it be the industry? Perhaps, yeah. So if there are 3 stakeholders, I would suggest go spend as much as time with them. Have a bunch of questions, open-ended questions. Take your phone, record those conversations. Spend time understanding what are their pain points. You just described one broad pain point, but go deeper into it. Ask them 10-15 questions on the same subject and let them talk. Let them pour their heart out saying, but I have such an issue with this and that, and I'm studying these subjects that are of no use to me, I'm doing, and then finally go to an industry, I have no idea, it takes me 9 months to get my first, confirmation, all this stuff. So let them talk about it. Go back to the school, go back to the colleges, ask them questions, let them talk about their pain points. Get their perspective of the whole thing. Go to the industry, ask them of their issues of how difficult, how much money they're investing on training, and these guys are not productive, and then they have such quality issues. So ask the industry. Record all that. Record all that, and then you will see a common trend emerging amongst all the key stakeholders. You'll find that all students are talking about 3 things which are so common. You'll find all the industries talking about 3 or 5 things which are so common. The colleges are talking about things. So now, you've got a common, this one problem, suddenly you have got into 3 or 5 different issues which are so common amongst all the key stakeholders. Now once you've got that, and this is across, now how deep is it? You're trying to figure out how deep the problem is, right? So you've gone deeper and deeper, you've recorded that, and then after that you've also figured out that this issue is not only in Bangalore, it's also in Delhi, also abroad. How global is the issue? So find out how global it is. and then you find the answer yourself. And once you've got that knowledge and you've got that data with you, then start categorizing the data. Actually put them into, we actually put them into stickies. We may actually put stickies, and one afternoon, I know we sat in the HSR layout across the whole conference table or the coffee table, and we had, I think, about 1,500 stickies all over the place, and then we started putting them on kg cardboards and telling them, okay, half of them are talking about this, all common issues are here. These are common. We started categorizing the problems, right? Once we started categorizing the problems, in your case, your course curriculum is going to come from that.
Absolutely.
So once you've said, okay, if I cover this, I'm going to help the student. If I cover this, I'm going to help the industry. If I do this, I'm going to help the college. And then ask them, how much would you pay? If I'm going to have a service like this, how much would you pay? If I provide a service like this, in a scale of 0 to 10, how much would you give it? 6, 7, what's the impact it will make? So start quantifying that problem. Once you start doing that, you've got all the answers yourself. And that will give the rise to your new business.
The next question, of course, will you be interested? But I can run the program.
Right now we are so focused. There's so much for us to do at this point. We are in fact we're looking for like-minded people to join us. Really, there's so much stuff happening. But having said that, we could talk. We could talk. So right now, Magnasoft, we have several other divisions and stuff. So we need to find
the more I visit colleges, I see more of these questions becoming more and more prominent.
Sure.
And originally, what I actually started out thinking that okay, maybe I can do a soft skills training, I can do a communications, I can do a negotiations training and all that. But then I realized that there are dime a dozen people for that. Wait, let's look at the problem more deeper.
Yeah.
The problem started becoming far deeper.
But you need to find the right folks to join you.
It's a very nuanced
fashion.
Very advanced.
Nuance. It depends on the industry. I think
The way I
interesting.
The way I looked at it, see, look at an Infosys, look at your own town. All of you are experienced, globally experienced with having faced bigger challenges and then also overcome them, which means that you can actually mentor your people and then pass on some of your practices so that they are better ready to come into it. That's the way I looked at it, saying, okay. Companies can also avoid probably running 2 years management programs, cut them down. There are these graduate management.
I think Ramesh, you need to look at people who can complement your strength. Because I see you as a domain expert in this industry, the CAD/CAM industry. Get somebody who's very strong in HR practices and training. So good training institute that's also struggling with just generic training. Speak to them, ask them if you can join hands with them. Right? Somebody who has a distribution channel across India. So this training has to happen across right from Chandigarh down to Chennai. So you need to have all the training. So you have these 3 pieces. You have somebody who can take care of your distribution and centers, or through online, whatever. Get an HR person who understands people skills and people practices and training, and you're the domain expert. You have these 3 people in place, then we will just be a consumer, a customer to you really. But you have these people who are specialists there, then you've got your entire core business.
Because eventually the idea is that they should be employable the moment they are ready for the function.
Yeah. But get the right folks, find the right partners, and then you'll be able to.
Sure. We'll take one question from there and then we'll come back. Please.
Yeah. Actually, I just wanted to ask you, does culture eat strategy for breakfast? Or is it vice versa? Culture eats strategy for breakfast? Or is it vice versa? And how did you build up that culture?
That's a very catchy title. I think culture is very important. The bottom line is no strategy will succeed. See, I take a slightly different route on that. I know which strategy will succeed. I think the key thing is if you co-create something with people, you get commitment. If you push down a strategy or a vision, you get compliance. You want commitment, you don't want compliance. Because people should be independent thinkers. Some of the things that I have struggled most with in my life, and I've seen other people struggle, is what I call the burden of experience. I mean, you know 100 ways, the 100 ways in which things can't be done. You have learned, that something can't be done. Get a fresher out of school, he'll come up with far better ideas, he or she, compared to what we can a lot of times. You know, the key thing, going back to the question of culture, I think culture is very, very important. The elements that for an entrepreneurial setup that formulate such a culture, to me, there are like 2 or 3 things I would pick. One is that intellectual arrogance. Give freedom to everybody to voice their opinion. You know, and people should get rid of that fear, you know, of any sort of reprisal, explicit or implicit. You know, people should be able to completely speak their mind. Never say, you know, how many times have you seen people saying, hey, I have a stupid question? There is no stupid question. You know, there aren't. I mean, the only one stupid question is the one that is not asked. You know, and you know, allow people that freedom. Create a culture where people feel respected, and be selfless when it comes to being an entrepreneur. Give people a piece of the company, you know, and they'll admire you for it because they are working for it. They are co-creating the value for it. Right? If you can create that kind of a culture where it's like a family, people respect each other, but there is respectable. You know, while there is respect, there is also they challenge you on a daily basis, and you challenge them back. And the only thing that succeeds is data. Right? I think it's the American Navy's slogan or something. Right? I don't remember whose slogan it is. In God we trust. Everybody else bring data, right? You know, I think that's, you know. So if you have that kind of culture, and after the dialogues and dialectic has happened, right, where people have voiced their opinions, and then a picture emerges, a strategy emerges, that you will have commitment from everybody. So in that kind of a culture, I think one doesn't need the other. I think they.
So first you build the culture.
Exactly, right?
Because it's also about executing the strategy, right?
Exactly.
So it's not about just the strategy, it's also who and how will you execute it. So then you get the buy-in from everybody, and that's how you can execute the strategy. So it's a culture of everything.
That article, I think, is a lot of times leaders are transplanted into larger organizations, right? And that is where, you know, if they come up with a particular DNA which works in a prior setup, where that kind of co-creation had happened, if you transplant that and then put it, it's like, you know, taking another tree and then putting it in a sand that might have, I don't know, different alkaline properties, right? That's when you have to make the effort to make them feel part of it, rather than in the, you know, all these 3-year CEOs. I don't mean that negatively, but when they come in, they are on a timeline. You know, they want to execute, and a lot of times you tend to be pushy. You tend to push strategy down the throat of people, and if you don't get the buy-in, it will be a disaster. That's what that means.
Yeah, those of you who are open offer that you're looking for like-minded people to advertise, you would love to know whether you're open to mentor a few startup class. Say a lot of us here are startups, so would you be open to mentor startups?
See, the thing is, mentor is a heavy term. You know, it brings in the notion that, you know, somebody is on a higher pedestal, and you know, I don't like that term. You know, frankly, you know, I can have I would like to call it coaching, first of all. Coaching is, I can have a fitness trainer who is my coach for my fitness. That doesn't mean that you know, each person like yourself would know 100 things that I don't, right? Are we open to coaching? Yes. I mean, we do look at you know, a few startups which have synergies with what we do, and then you know, the amount of time that we pour into what we do today is so huge that neither of us. I'm sorry for speaking.
Absolutely.
As well, Bobbie. I don't think either of us have a lot of time to spend. But if somebody comes to us, they are like us, right? I mean, you have that connect. You know, the entrepreneur community is one community, right? We unhesitatingly share whatever we know, right? Whatever it might be worth to the other person. I do that all the time, and I know Bobbie does that all the time. But we may not be able to commit to, hey, I can spend X number of hours with you each month, right? We can't do that. But anybody who has come to us, at least, you know, that I know of, Bobbie as well as me, you know, they come with a business plan and say that, hey, can you review our business plan? Give us a few comments. Absolutely.
Something
You
that
know,
you talk about.
yeah,
Maybe works
absolutely.
like coaching or a mentor comes with an obligation. So
Correct.
maybe once in a while coming.
Yeah, once in a while, absolutely.
We do that even,
We are also in a startup mode ourselves.
Yeah.
So time, and we have to do justice to it. But once in a while, why not? We were here this morning.
So you were mentioning about software as a service model. and marketplace concept. So that marketplace concept is in the board right now. And so you were mentioning about concentrating your ideas, your skills based on what you can do better, and probably delegate it to your team members or whoever it is. So drawing parallels from what I'm trying to do, I'm also trying to do something in a marketplace concept. Sorry, my name is Raji. So, so in this case, one of the dilemmas that I face is that I'm not technically strong to build my product. Say, I need to know PHP in my specific case. I don't know that. So here I was trying to figure out if there is somebody who will be able to help me with it, who can join me full time, but then leaving their job and then getting into it full time. Something difficulty that I faced. I tried doing it for 3-4 months. I didn't get anybody to join me. Finally, I decided to give it and outsource it to somebody who will do it for me. So now the challenge that I face is that here I am, I realize that my productivity, my commitment, everything has substantially increased from what I was, and I have more at stake right now. But here I am not able to push or get things done the way that I wanted. Or as you said, understand the problem and then put yourself in the shoes and then try to build the way that you wanted, bring in some amount of innovation. This problem, that's number one. Number two, when I position my product to people, when I want to scale up further, the way people might look at it is a little cynical. Acha, you come with a business background, you come with ideas, but your core strength is technology and you don't know technology. And you don't have a partner which is like full-time into technology. What you're banking on is actually a person whom you're outsourced to. So how do you face this, how to go about it?
It's a tough one. Raji.
Yes.
So I think you're approaching it the right way. You have to find somebody who complements your skills, right? To sort of take it to the next level. Finding that person is not easy a lot of times, especially during the initial stages. Right? I think one has to keep looking. That's one. The second, like you rightly said, I think it is not a bad idea what you did, which is go to like, I don't know, ventureproduct.com or one of those places where you frame a business problem, which is some sort of a MVP, minimum viable prototype, right? And getting it done so that you get some interest and then maybe even sort of hire an internal team that will work with your guidance. That will get you a bandwidth in-house, it won't get you the partner. A partner should be somebody who believes in the idea and then who is willing to throw his lot with you, his or her lot with you to be able to take the next level. I don't have an answer for that.
Absolutely.
You're lucky you get it quickly. Otherwise it takes some doing.
I would say absolutely. I completely agree. You have to get somebody, looking out to get somebody. Perhaps what you've done now is outsourced to get maybe your first prototype out. So don't spend too much money on that.
Yes.
Just spend enough for you to further go sell this concept to another partner. So maybe you're not able to communicate your entire business and business model to a potential partner, a technology person. But perhaps use this company to build that first prototype. Get it completely cleaned up and make sure it really delivers on what you have in your mind. And use that to eventually get somebody on board full time as a partner on an equity model who's willing to have skin in the game. Otherwise, it will be quite difficult for you to scale up. Because, like you said, the bandwidth would just go in outsourcing and managing that, and then spending that kind of money because those guys are interested in just building you. They're not interested in building your product. while they come and talk a lot of stuff, their business is to kind of invoice you every month and say, so many hours spent here, please pay me for this, right? So unless you find the right partner, and then you look at, like I said, other startups as well. So you find a lot of startups where you find a lot of technology guys who put out strong business ideas. So you go to startup forums and network with people and say, hey, why are you doing this? Look at the CTOs or technology guys from those companies saying, hey, I know you've been in this business for like 4, 5, 6, 7 years. How far have you got? I've got this idea. Why don't you, moonlight me for some time? Why don't you look at this and get them excited? You have to get them excited, because if you're not able to get a partner tomorrow, how will you get your investors? How will you get your customers? So that's the most important.
The last thing that Bobbie said, I think it's very critical. It's not necessary that we have to do our own startup. Yeah. A lot of times we could always partner with somebody who has a similar idea. Join another startup, right? That is also a possibility. Exactly. There are so many startups that are going into the market. I don't know your idea, but what I'm trying to tell you is that there are so many companies that are building niche marketplaces, right? So it is possible that you might find somebody that is in that space who is a little more ahead of you than you are. And one possibility is that you become part of them, and drive that idea forward. Those are also possibilities.
If you get your first partner, the technology person, he or she can then drive the outsourcing piece of it. Right? So that could be a strategy later. Right?
That's exactly what I've been trying to do. So the idea that I'm trying to do is basically a marketplace for it's an education space. It's something related to mentoring and what we're talking about. So it basically brings professionals in the industry, bring them in one platform along with students. I've spoken to you about it. So bring them together and let them interact. So it's a marketplace concept in that sense. So what I'm doing is that the person that I have outsourced this idea to somebody, a friend of mine who is running a small software shop. But then he himself is mired with a lot of things and projects that he's doing. So there's an amount of mind space that he can give, and those are also limited in that sense. So I'm specifically looking at somebody who can be in this full time and then try to see the challenge.
What are the legal issues you went through from coming from Denmark's CAD to Magnasoft? Were there any legal issues that you went through? Legal issues? Like registering your company or something like that?
Not really. Cinemax initially was proprietorship, then to Cinemax, Magnasoft was a partnership, and then to a private limited company. So today it's very easy to have a good CA or part-time person who can register the organization, you can look for a name, then you register. Not a big deal. The thing is to find the right .com is very important. That's more difficult. So you can find the right name and find the .com is more challenging. Otherwise today it's opened up, it's not that.
Yeah. So what is vision of expansion of your company and scaling up? So what is it? Most of the new startups, they think of scaling up very fast, right? Expand very fast. So and then they end up failing. Most of them. So is it a way to expand for means slow or very fast? Means all about the money, get money fast, and then expand up.
No, so for us, the North Star, we've gone about in a very systematic way. So we spent a year's time to decide what we want to be doing after we met. It's not that we came with the idea and then we met. We said, okay, we've come together, let's look for the idea. It took us a year doing the market research, spending time, and we actually wanted to get a navigation business. We said no. So we went about in a very systematic way. So today, if you look at a B2S, a business to school business, it's a linear growth model. Today, every other day, we are adding more schools and we're growing the business, right? But today's world is all about disruptive technologies. It's all about how can you disrupt the business model, right? So while we've understood that the pain point is there, parents are paying, schools are buying our products, we are making money, it's all great, but it's linear growth. It's not it's not like taking off. It's not exponential growth. So now with the whole B2C model, the one that we're going to come out with this year, we are hoping to disrupt the entire business. So you must have a combination of both. It's all about making sure that fundamentally you have your cash flows in place, so that at least your team and sustainability is there, and then you look for something that can scale up. Or if you have nothing to lose, look at a disruptive model. If it works, doesn't work. There's a lot of different ways you want to be doing it. I'm more of an old school. I like to sort of reinvest, make money fundamentally, look at the profitability and reinvest that money, and then it's a little slow model, but keep experimenting on the side to find one or two ideas that disrupt, and then you got your scalability. Right combination.
Sure. Is it true that B2C would be typically a faster scaling up than B2B because of the sales challenges everywhere? You have to do like a project selling. And
Not really. I mean, it's
absolutely.
The volume is very important.
See, the concept is if you solve it for a general persona, and if you solve a problem, and if you solve it well, then the scaling presumption is true, because then it will take off by itself. The key thing is just having access to the market, just going after consumers without a well-defined solution to a problem that they're willing to pay for. It won't help. I mean, there are a lot of people who throw money at stuff, right? including since we are sitting next to Flipkart, right? Now they have to make it work. You know, they have competition, a lot of money. But what's your differentiator? Ultimately, if they succeed, the differentiator is going to come from what they do differently in terms of either business model or in terms of the quality of products that they sell, right? Because at the end of the day, people, you know, if you're buying something, ultimately the only thing you're looking for is price. There is no stickiness. You don't go to a portal like that for how beautifully the product catalog is laid out. You go there to find what you're looking for, and then you buy it, right? Similarly, even in the B2C space, the way we have approached it, like Bobbie said, we want to make sure that we have solved the problem well. We have been blessed that we got into the B2S space, and we understand that fairly well over the last 3 years. 3 years, we have spoken to many, many people, all the stakeholders. Now we understand the pain points reasonably well. Now we believe we are ready for doing a B2C product. We could have done this 3 years ago. We could have gone after B2C straight away, but we chose not to. Because I think the depth of understanding and the quality of the solution is very important before you go after the consumer space. Because it's very unforgiving. Look at Redmi phones, for example. It's a hardware example. They sold a ton of them, then there was all these overhanging problems and all that. You know what I mean? And they were able to fix that quickly enough because they probably had that as part of the plan. It could be a huge disaster if you expose a fledgling solution too quickly. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but you know what I mean?
Reaching the critical mass, right? Reaching the critical mass is very important.
See, recently, if you see the successes, which you just named, like where you take inspiration, you take Google, you take Facebook, now here you take Flipkart, and even Amazon you take, and you take, say, Snapdeal or whatever. So all of these are really, in my knowledge, operating in the consumer space, B2C space. Right? None of them is B2B space. Right? If you take that mega scalability and the fast scalability, it's probably maybe better to be in the recent successes that you see.
No, I think I misunderstood your question. If you're asking, should we pick a problem where you have which affects billions of consumers? The answer is yes. I mean, if you're looking for scale, you have to look for a problem that is generalizable. That said, Amazon was not an overnight success. You know when Amazon got funded? They got funded in early 2000. Okay? And then 2002, the dot-com bust happened. I was in the Bay Area, at that time. People didn't have, and Amazon didn't make money until 2005. They didn't break even. I don't know if you guys know. And until then, people were really desperate to take the money out. They wanted to take it out, but they had nowhere else to put it in because all the dot-coms had gone bust. So they got a free ride for almost 5 years before they turned their profit. Right? So they got a free ride simply because venture capitalists couldn't have taken the money and put it elsewhere. So it didn't happen overnight. Today, they are probably ahead of the other people, I won't take names, in terms of technology by 10 years. If you look at their price crawlers, the frequency at which they crawl the other sites. If you look at the machine learning they do to do the matching in terms of search results and all that, right? Amazon is 10 years ahead of everybody else. And that technology, they've also packaged it and offered it to other people. We run on their code. Which is why, like somebody said, right, why sweat yourself when somebody else is honored to sweat for you, right? So they have built that product. So that scale did not happen on day one. Today they are able to scale, today they are able to modify their pricing model, and they have deep enough pockets to undercut other people so that they go out of their business. After 12 years of time, you know what I mean?
They were probably also delayed because of two factors. One is 2002, they burst in, so they were delayed. And also because the market maybe was not mature at the time, they were the early ones.
The other differentiator is the online model, right? The whole distribution model is very different in consumer space today, which was earlier very difficult. Earlier, if you look at the whole Nokia story, right? They tied up with HCL, 30,000 outlets across India is what they set up to sell Nokia phones across in the brick and mortar business. But today, you just go online and buy stuff online, which is not there earlier. So, from a scalability perspective, if you look at Salesforce.com, it's a pure B2B business, not B2C, but it's one of the most successful models. But it's a SaaS solution. So, I think the business model is also very important. From a scalability perspective.
At the end of the day, I mean, if you find a problem for which you have a solution that you believe is good enough.
And then B2B or B2C?
You know, time is not a factor. I mean, you know, I'm sure there will be companies which discover solutions and the problem set within a year and they become hugely successful. Is that possible? Of course it is. But typically the kind of problems that we have seen with, they are fairly complex problems. And the buyers are nuanced. They have their own behaviors. Different markets are different. So it is one size fits all, even for Amazon, even for Yahoo, even for Facebook's, hasn't really worked that well when they hit into other markets. The reason why that gets hidden or you know, brushed under the carpet is because they have had so much success at home, and you know, they make their billions at home. So a lot of times international business, you know, sort of, you know, if you look at Google, for example, right, they have had so many failures as well. Google Plus today is struggling, for example. Gmail itself took a long time for adoption, right? Their primary money even today is search, and will continue to be search. You know, Oracle, if you look at it, the Oracle database, right? More of a technology story. But the bottom line is, you are right. I think you know, if you had the right solution and you are convinced that it is generalizable across geographies, across markets, you know, you could have very quick success in B2C. But the bottom line is, you know, you have to be sure of that, and only you know, right, the problem that you are dealing with, right? It's an intuition. A lot of times it's intuition. You don't really know. Sometimes you fail, sometimes you don't. It's okay. It's okay. But if you throw tons of money, VC money, then like Bobbie said, you know, they are always breathing down your neck. And if you are putting in your own money, you are also a little bit of you don't take that kind of illogical risks. You usually think, hey, you know, let me test this in a smaller pot before I throw the money at, I don't know, radio singles and TV advertising and all that stuff, right?
So I don't know what you said. I think Google is like Output also was one of the examples which never from Google, which would have been Facebook.
Correct.
Actually, it took off much before Facebook, and they're so famous. But just
B2S, you said? You were in
Business to school.
Oh.
We'll just take one last question. So you were mentioning about cash flow. My question is earlier, you took that word. Specifically relating to the survival of a startup. This is much before I even get an angel money or a VC money. So I've heard people say that what you have to really think about and keep you afloat is that you have a cash flow. Not necessarily look at profits, but make sure that there is a cash flow in, and then try to draw down as less as possible. So can you just throw some light on how to go about with it? And I'm talking about cash flow from the operational side or otherwise.
So cash flow is cash inflow first, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about cash
So
flow.
first inflow is important. So get your customers in who can start giving you money. So one is the expense part of it. Of course, expense have to be kept low, but you need little money. You need that critical mass to run the ops, anyways. But what I was trying to say was that focus on getting your first customer in place, your first billable customer who's going to sign the check and say, okay, I believe in your product, I believe in your service, I'm going to give you this money if I like it. And then from there you get your first, your second, your third client, and that money starts coming in. So that's cash inflow first. And of course you have to manage your outflow in terms of your bare minimum that you need. You need a core team, you need to spend money, you need to have some bare capital. For example, when I started way back, I know I went to the bank. The Bank of India got 5 lakhs of term loan. I put 1 lakh, which I did some real estate deal here in Sajapur, and put that money from my margin money into a 5 lakh loan on that, and hypothecated my first 486 machine, which costed me, about 1 lakh or so those days, and then bought a plotting machine. So, there's different ways of raising money, but the thing is to focus on the customer, because why would a bank give you money if you didn't have an order in hand? So you have your first 10 orders in place, and you need money to execute those orders. Anybody is going to give you the money.
But sir, you were talking more in terms of a B2B, if I got it.
Any business for that.
No, in a B2C, where it's largely volume driven and single transactions or invoices are probably of much lesser money or amount.
So I'm talking B2B.
No, I'm talking coming from my business, coming from a B2C
perspective. Okay.
Wherein it's volume which drives, and per transaction might be a few $100. But what I'm looking for over a period of time to scale up, and volume is going to drive.
Right.
So how in that case?
That case, you must have some basic capital in place, right? You must have through family, friends. That money has to come from. How much money do you need to get your first prototype out? or get your first, there must be certain milestones against which either you will put your money or somebody else will put their money, right? Those milestones are very important. Get your first 100 consumers in place. Get your first, for example, I'll tell you what we are doing right now is that, yeah, we are investing in building the B2C solution right now, but we're coming up with a prototype in the next 3 months, which we'll first experiment with the first 100 consumers.
Only 100?
Only 100. And we'll go out to them and they have to buy it. Maybe at a discounted price. They will buy it from us, but we'll also learn a lot from them. That would give you the confidence that, hey, I'm going to be investing a lot more into this to scale up. Or to get, if 100 people like it, obviously 1,000 will like it. If 1,000 like it, it becomes viral and you get your first million users. So getting it right is very important in terms of the consumer play. And the minimum amount you need, like in your case, you just need a couple of good developers, and more than that, get your first 10. Can you sell the concept on a PowerPoint today? Can you get an LOI from 10 prospect consumers or 100 first 100 saying, hey, I'll buy it if at this price point if you build it. Right? So that is most important from a
One last question, if you don't mind.
Have I answered your?
Yes. Just one last thing that I wanted to add. One last thing I wanted to add to respond to Rajiv about the ones that I am aware of. I am aware of a bunch of angels. Right? So typically, angels are the right way to go, not VCs at your stage. This is a specific response to you. Typically, if they are sold on the slideware that Bobbie was talking about, they will put in the initial amount of money if you need it. I mean, if you fund it yourself, you don't need angels. But they are the ones who will be with you in the trenches. They come in, they believe in you, your passion and everything that Bobbie was talking about earlier. And they are not like the VCs. They won't be looking behind you because they, that's where they operate, the pre-VC area. So if you need to, you could look at some angels.
And to go to the angel, you need all those first.
Yeah, you need them.
Just one last question, I'll keep it short. What if your target is customer acquisition? Not really something like a WhatsApp, right? That's what is going to get you growing. My question is that a bubble waiting to burst? Because you're not making money, but you got a whole lot of users.
Yeah, I'm still very old school, so yeah, I would say, but I don't know, Shyam can.
I don't know, I'm conflicted on this.
I'm also pretty conflicted on this.
I'm conflicted on this. There are cases where people have to, I tell you the Bay Area thinking, right? Most of the tech companies, I know most people, many senior leaders in most of these tech companies in the US. There used to be a time when people said, hey, get consumers to join. Once you cross 1 million, we'll figure out how to make money. So that was one school of thought, and it worked in patches. I won't say it didn't work. So for example, when Google came into being, when Yahoo said they didn't want to do algorithm search anymore. They asked Google to do it, and Google wanted Schmidt and other guys. They wanted Yahoo to buy them for $5 billion because Overchuck then figured out how to do search engine monetization, right? So there was that school of thought earlier, where you have any number of customers and then figure out monetization. Increasingly, what I have seen, and I could be wrong because this is not statistically analyzed, people want you to have a monetization model. They will not fund you if you had a SaaS product, right? They will tell you what, will you break even? When will you break even? What is the funding you need to get to that? Are you making more money by offering a service than what you need to spend on that? Forget about capitalization. Forget about initial product building cost and all that, right? That they will be willing to invest. But once you do that, will you build a profitable business? If you just say that, hey, I'll subsidize phone calls, I'll subsidize text messages, and I get 15 million, right? After that, what? Right? I don't think people do that. People might do that if they have a thriving existing search business and they don't have enough accounts to put the money in and they want to throw money at few products. And frankly, there are that many companies out there. They all, even internally, have a much higher part. If you go for internal investment, they say, hey, when will you break even? That question will always be there. I think that time is past. There was a time when that was happening. I personally, if I were to push, today that I am in the entrepreneurial space, right, I would say no. Would I put my own money in this venture? That's my question. If I had the kind of money I need to acquire 10 million customers and I don't have a monetization strategy, I would not. And most people would, the answer is no. Today, if you were to ask all the leading VCs, the answer would be no.
You could actually, you could cut upon your profits, cost plus, it's okay, but not the loss.
That's
That's fundamental of business.
About what is happening, Hike, for example, BSB is investing, they're not making any money. There are so many other companies like that which want to acquire customers, and there are other reasons, non-monetary reasons why they want to do that. That's still legitimate. It's not necessary that if you were, if you're building a independent business, you would look at only monetization of that in that sense. But if getting 15 million customers has ripple effects that will help the rest of the business, and then you get some money out of it, that's fine.
That's where I think Facebook looked at it. Not necessarily monetary businesses.
That's right.
The reason why they acquired WhatsApp,
exactly.
not necessarily monetary businesses right now,
okay.
but acquiring those number of, maybe they also link that.
That's right.
Those customers to Facebook.
Correct. That's right. Exactly. And then there is acquisition cost for every user, right? If you did the math, Facebook said, I don't know what their math was, but it looked attractive. Hey, I get, this is my acquisition cost, this is 10% less. I get all these users directly.
So I'd like to thank you, Bobbie and Shyam, for a great lecture. Thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome to the Startup Grind.